right, I now call this oversight hearing to order. At today's hearing, we're going to learn more about the Department of Energy's tribal energy programs, both its Office of Indian Energy and the Loan Program Office's Tribal Energy Financing Program, and how these programs are working and what can be improved upon to better serve tribes in their efforts to unleash their energy resources. We'll also be able to hear from the Denali Commission about its work in partnership with DOE in promoting energy infrastructure in rural Alaska Native communities. Tribes were historically left out of national electrification efforts and still today face lower rates of electricity access and higher energy cost burdens than other communities in America. The Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs at the Department of Energy is helping fill these gaps by providing technical and financial assistance to tribes across the country. In Igiugig, Alaska, for example, the Office of Indian Energy helped fund the installation of 2 hydrokinetic devices on the Kvichak River and energy storage technology. The devices were designed specifically to not disturb the sockeye salmon that run in the Kvichak, which Igiugig residents rely upon for subsistence. The devices augment the community's diesel fuel facility, saving the small community nearly $170,000 a year, which is a lot of money for a small community. And this is not a one-off example. There are tribally led opportunities for development and community sustainability across Indian country and Alaska. While tribal lands only account for 2% of all lands in the country, they contain an estimated 50% of potential uranium reserves, 30% of coal reserves west of the Mississippi, 20% of known oil and gas reserves, and 6.5% of all utility-scale potential renewable energy resources. As more tribes jump into the energy development space and look to build resilience in their existing energy systems, lower costs, and generate revenue that can then be used to boost the tribal economy and fund social services, they often need greater amounts of capital. And unfortunately, we know that complexities due to permitting, land jurisdiction, and ownership, and the unfamiliarity of banking with lending to tribes means that tribes are often at a disadvantage when developing their own resources and connecting their communities to the grid. 86% of tribal lands with energy potential are undeveloped, and this, I think, is unacceptable. Here in Congress, we've worked on a bipartisan basis to try and provide avenues for tribal capital access. And yet, as the GAO has found in their Tribal Energy Finance Report, one of those avenues, the Tribal Energy Financing Program at DOE, is not working. Meant to enable tribal access to loans and loan guarantees, DOE's Loan Program Office has successfully closed only 1 loan guarantee since the solicitation was first issued in 2018, and you'll hear that repeated throughout today's oversight. Since 2018, only 1 loan guarantee has been closed, no loans. We've talked about this before in the committee, and both Congress and DOE have taken multiple steps to improve the program, but these haven't gone far enough. So I'm going to look forward to hearing from GAO on their recommendations, particularly the potential for a public financing pathway. Such a change could improve program implementation by allowing DOE to treat tribes as the governments they are, rather than as large-scale utilities or private equity groups that receive the other kinds of loans from LPO. Maybe then we would see the existing $20 billion in loan authority that exists utilized to get the projects done. The insights and feedback that we garner here today will help us as we work together to ensure that tribes are poised to take advantage of their resources, build more resilient, cost-effective energy systems, and benefit from and contribute to this administration's focus on unleashing American energy. I also want to note that our hearing record is open for 2 weeks, and we would welcome feedback from tribes and tribal energy development organizations on these topics as well. So I now turn to the Vice Chair for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Murkowski. Last Congress, we made historic bipartisan investments in Indian country's energy future and its ability to determine that future for itself, whether through non-renewable or renewable sources. We authorized nearly $500 million directly to Native communities for their energy needs and made them eligible for billions more. Our goal was to help to set up Native communities on a new path to energy security, regardless of the type of energy. Until recently, we saw dividends on those investments. For example, the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program issued its first successful loan after the IRA increased its loan guarantee amount from $2 billion to $20 billion and authorized $75 million for tribes to help stand up their energy projects. We also acted so that tribes could receive DOE funds to address their energy needs in ways that worked for them and empowered their energy sovereignty. Congress listened to Native communities and invested in their energy development potential, putting them in the driver's seat. We made progress, but now there are real efforts to undo that progress. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act is a case in point. More than 100 tribes wrote about the importance of the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program and the IRA's tax credits, urging Congress not to reverse course. But over the objection of Native communities and their industry partners, the One Big Beautiful Bill rescinded millions in funding for the DOE's Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program and raised energy costs by terminating tax credits that could account for up to 70% of project costs for tribes and their energy partners. On top of this, President Trump is directing agencies to cancel and delay renewable energy projects only, and his proposed cuts to DOE funding and staff will exacerbate the brain drain from thousands of employees who have already left to thousands more who may be subject to DOE's RIF plan. This historic loss of staff and resources creates risk for tribes whose energy goals can't be met without federal dollars and the expertise of agency staff who make tribal energy projects a reality. Last Congress, we started to move past the status quo, but now it feels like we're not even returning to that old mark, but going past it. So I want to better understand what's happening at DOE so that we can continue working in a bipartisan way to hold the federal government accountable to Indian country's energy needs. I look forward to the testimony from today's panel, and I thank you for coming to testify.
Thank you, Vice Chair Schatz. We will now turn to witnesses. We have today Mr. David Conrad. He is the Acting Director and Deputy Director at the U.S. Department of Energy Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs. He will be followed by Dr. Ana Maria Ortiz, who is the Director at the Government Accountability Office, GAO, in the Natural Resources and Environment Division. And we have the opportunity today to have back before the committee Ms. Jocelyn Fenton. Jocelyn is the Director of Programs at the Denali Commission. Thank you for being here, all of you. Jocelyn, thank you for making the long trip from Alaska to be here today. I want to remind the witnesses that we do have your full written testimony. It will be part of the official hearing record, so we would ask that you keep your oral comments to no more than 5 minutes, so we've got plenty of time for members to ask questions. So, Mr. Conrad, if you would please begin with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair Murkowski and Vice Chair Schatz and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to speak about unleashing tribal energy. My name is David Conrad, as you mentioned, and I'm a citizen of the Osage Nation, and I'm proud to serve as the Deputy Director and Acting Director of the Department of Energy's Office of Indian Energy. My career began with the Council of Energy Resource Tribes in 1991 and is centered on tribal energy ever since. I've worked in intergovernmental relations and energy development, both within tribal government and the federal government. These experiences have given me an understanding of the tribal energy sector's complexities and the transformative potential for tribal nations. 20 years ago, this committee championed the Indian Tribal Energy Development and Self-Determination Act. It was a vital part of the Energy Policy Act of 2005, establishing the Office of Indian Energy within the Department of Energy. Title V of that act charged our office with lowering energy costs for tribes, developing Indian energy, addressing gaps in electricity access in Indian country. This law also directed us to carry out our programs in accordance with the principles of self-determination. Simply put, Congress told us to trust tribes to know what is best for their citizens as they pursue energy projects. Over the last 20 years, the Office of Indian Energy has fulfilled our congressional mandate. We have supported over 240 tribal energy projects. We've delivered more affordable and reliable energy to over 11,000 homes and buildings across Indian country. And we have fulfilled over 500 requests for technical assistance, giving tribes access to expertise at our national labs to carry out strategic energy planning, analyze the potential of their energy resource, and chart a course to achieve their energy visions. I'm privileged to lead the Office of Indian Energy during another pivotal moment as we work to unleash tribal energy. Under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Wright, our vital work continues with a key addition. We are strengthening our commitment to ensure tribes share in the prosperity of American energy dominance. Securing access to affordable and reliable energy also remains central to our mission and congressional charge. Tribes possess extensive energy resources. Our new additional focus will help ensure that they are poised to capture a greater share of the energy value chain. While resource ownership offers its own opportunities, tribes increasingly want to develop their own energy resources using their own expertise and workforces. The Office of Indian Energy is working to support tribes to implement their vision. In March, we partnered with the Department of Commerce to extend the Commercial Law Development Program to support tribes in advancing high-value energy projects such as data centers, critical minerals development, and new generation and transmission infrastructure. The program is already serving multiple tribal partners to enhance the legal environment for the energy sector commerce to thrive in their communities. Additionally, in collaboration with the Department's Energy Innovator Fellowship Program, 11 new Energy Innovator Fellows have been placed in tribal host institutions this year. This is the largest number of fellows at tribal hosts of any cohort to date. These fellows work with tribes to modernize power systems, enhance energy infrastructure, and contribute to a more reliable, affordable, and resilient U.S. power system. Finally, we expanded our Tribal Energy Navigator service with dedicated staff. This service responds to inquiries from tribes, developing energy projects, and facilitates more efficient access to all of DOE's programs, as well as other federal energy programs available to them. Building on the foundation laid by this committee 20 years ago, we continue to foster the trust and predictability essential for Indian country to unleash their own energy resources. As the tribal energy sector gains momentum, tribes are proving that American Indian Alaska Native livelihoods flourish most when tribes direct their own energy development. The Office of Indian Energy, in partnership with tribal nations and other federal agencies, remains committed to maximizing the impact of federal investments in this sector. And we look forward to continuing this essential work with this committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad. Next, we turn to Dr. Ortiz. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Murkowski, Vice Chair Schatz, members of the committee, thank you for having me today. My name is Anna Marie Ortiz, and I have the honor of overseeing GAO's portfolio in tribal and Native American issues. And I'm happy to discuss our recent report on the Tribal and Energy Finance Program. Unleashing potential energy resources throughout Indian country could greatly increase access to reliable and affordable electricity, contribute to tribal economic development, and help address the nation's energy production needs. The Department of Energy's Tribal Energy Finance Program, run by its Loan Programs Office, or LPO, exists to help tribes and tribal applicants with limited access to private capital to invest in their own lands and resources. The program is technology neutral and has the authority to offer up to $20 billion in direct loans and loan guarantees. Additionally, the program focuses on tribal ownership of projects, allowing even small tribes a chance to participate. These features offer tribes with different lands and resources the flexibility to determine their own approaches to effective energy development, consistent with the principle of tribal sovereignty. Despite these benefits, GAO found that LPO administered the Tribal Energy Finance Program in ways that make it nearly impossible for applicants to successfully navigate the loan process. Program design features have deterred many potential applicants and have delayed and lengthened the process for others. For example, LPO places the burden of due diligence, the underwriting process for the loan or loan guarantee, on the backs of tribal applicants, obligating them to commit unknown amounts of money to pay for contracted legal and technical experts, some of whom lack sufficient expertise in tribal energy development. This puts the tribe on the hook for these consultants' learning curves and potentially millions of dollars overall. If applicants are not deterred by the program's design features, they confront lengthy application review processes, inconsistent and conflicting program guidance, and limited and changing LPO staff, many of whom lack appropriate training and experience. For example, one applicant spent nearly 2 years in the review process, responding to varied and redundant requests for information from different LPO staff before a key development partner pulled out, effectively jettisoning the project. Since the Tribal Energy Finance Program first solicited applications in 2018, LPO has only completed one partial loan guarantee. As of July 2025, 12 other applications have been rejected, withdrawn, or paused. Of the 7 remaining active applications, 4 have been under review for more than 2 years. The Tribal Energy Finance Program is a poignant example of what happens when tribal programs are designed and administered without regard to tribal needs. By modeling its application review process on a different program designed primarily for large projects and untested technologies, the Department of Energy inadvertently curtailed its ability to effectively serve tribal applicants. GAO recommended, and the Department of Energy agreed, that LPO review and revise program elements, develop and document consistent and coherent guidance for staff and applicants, and designate dedicated staff with tribal expertise to support the program. GAO's recommendations aim to remove unnecessarily complex and lengthy processes imposed by LPO to unleash the program to its full potential. Thank you. This concludes my oral statement. I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ortiz. Ms. Fenton, welcome back to the committee.
Hello, Madam Chair, Vice Chairman Schatz, and members of the committee. Thank you for your leadership and dedication to advancing energy security for rural and tribal communities in Alaska and throughout Indian country. My name is Jocelyn Fenton, Director of Programs at the Denali Commission, and I'm privileged to present the insights and experiences of our agency, our partners, and the Alaskans we serve. The Denali Commission was created by Congress in 1998 to address critical infrastructure and economic development needs in rural Alaska. For more than 25 years, the Commission has served as a federal partner for more than 200 isolated villages, each home to a federally recognized tribe. These villages average fewer than 500 residents, are accessible only by plane or boat, and face some of the most extreme environmental conditions in the United States. Life in these villages depends on a fragile but vital infrastructure system: small diesel powerhouses, bulk fuel tank farms, and water treatment systems. These tank farms store the diesel and gasoline required not only for electric generation, but also for heating homes, fueling boats and snow machines, and running schools, clinics, and water plants. Without safe, reliable fuel storage, the entire community is at risk. Unfortunately, most of this infrastructure is aging and deteriorating. The Alaska Energy Authority, the state's energy arm, estimates over $1 billion is needed just to bring rural tank farms into safe, code-compliant condition, and with another $400 million is needed for upgrading powerhouses. Less than half have been upgraded, and even those are now aging out of their service life. Some communities still use tanks that are older than 70 years. The consequences of failure are severe. In rural Alaska, when the power goes out, it's not just the lights. Freezers holding food collected over the summer and fall thaw, water systems freeze and burst, and health emergencies follow. Energy security is community survival. The costs are staggering as well. Rural households spend about 27% of their income on energy, nearly 4 times what urban households spend. Electricity in some villages costs more than $1 per kilowatt hour, compared to the national average of about 16 cents. Every other part of life, like groceries, transportation, housing, is more expensive as a result. Investments in bulk fuel storage are among some of the most effective strategies to reduce these costs. A 2017 study found that upgrading tank farms saved communities more than $2 per gallon in fuel costs. Yet, despite these proven benefits, appropriations have not kept pace with the growing backlog of needs. This is where partnerships, especially with the Department of Energy, make a real difference. DOE programs can provide both technical expertise and financial assistance that help tribes design and implement solutions suited for their communities. The DOE Office of Indian Energy plays a vital role in Alaska. Through technical assistance, financial planning, and competitive grants, the office has supported dozens of Alaska tribes in developing diesel hybrid systems with the integration and investigation of additional resources such as hydropower and geothermal. These projects are often small in scale, but for communities of a few hundred residents, they mean the difference between barely keeping the lights on and moving towards resilience. The Arctic Energy Office provides another layer of support through the Arctic Energy Ambassadors Program. These ambassadors are local practitioners who bring technical knowledge directly into villages and from villages, sharing lessons learned and best practices while helping residents plan and implement energy projects. This model builds capacity on the ground and ensures projects are regionally appropriate, climate tested, and durable for existing conditions. The Denali Commission complements these DOE efforts by serving as a local convener by braiding funding streams. For example, we've paired EPA resources and Commission funds to deliver complete bulk fuel upgrades in high-need villages. Recent interagency coordination enabled more than $100 million in these resources to flow directly to at-risk tank farms, while DOE-supported planning ensured those projects were ready to move. Importantly, Alaska's partnerships look beyond our borders. National and regional collaboration connects Alaska's tribes with tribal communities in Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, Washington, continuing to provide opportunities for knowledge sharing on microgrids, distributed generation, and cold climate technologies. The challenges of small, isolated communities are not unique to Alaska, and any solution developed in our villages should be replicated across Indian country. Even with these strong partnerships, unmet needs are growing. Federal appropriations alone are not enough. Communities need financing tools that are designed for their scale and circumstances. Most rural utilities and tribes in Alaska operate on razor-thin margins. They cannot meet credit or scale requirements of existing federal loan programs, and as a result, many federal financing tools remain out of reach. Without flexible, accessible loan options, communities are unable to leverage grants and pursue larger projects. This is an area where Congress could make a tremendous impact, expanding and simplifying financing mechanisms, whether through revolving loan funds, loan guarantees, or intermediators with local expertise, could unlock projects across rural Alaska and throughout Indian country. Technical assistance is equally important. Planning, engineering, financial structuring can be as difficult as construction itself. DOE's Office of Indian Energy has proven how effective technical support can be in moving projects forward, but resources are limited. Expanding funding for circuit rider programs and regional energy planners would provide consistent, trusted assistance to more communities. I also want to emphasize that this is not just an Alaskan issue. Energy security in Alaska's villages has direct implications for U.S. national security. The Arctic is a region of growing geopolitical importance, and resilient energy systems in Alaska support both civilian communities and national defense operations. Alaska can also serve as a proving ground for advanced technologies. If hybrid microgrids, renewable integration, or small modular reactors can work in Alaska's extreme conditions, they can work anywhere. These innovations, supported by DOE partnerships, have the potential to benefit tribal and rural communities across the country. In closing, I would underscore these points. Bulk fuel tank farms and microgrids are lifeline infrastructure in rural Alaska. Their condition directly determines whether communities can thrive, not just survive. Partnerships with DOE through the Office of Indian Energy, Arctic Energy Office, and other DOE groups with regional collaboration are critical for moving projects forward from concept to completion and building tribal capacity. And to meet the scale of need, we must expand beyond grants. Flexible financing and sustained technical assistance tailored to small tribal utilities are essential for long-term resilience. Energy is the foundation for survival, but it's also the foundation for prosperity. For Alaska's villages and for the nation, investing in these systems strengthens our communities, our economy, and our presence in the Arctic. Thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fenton. Thank you all for your testimony. You know, as I was listening to your remarks, Ms. Fenton, you know, You're talking about bulk fuel, and it seems kind of like yesterday's solution, right? Storing fuel in a bulk tank, waiting to meet the need, so that you can power your diesel generator for your community. And everyone's thinking, well, that's old stuff. Our reality is that we still are relying on old stuff in many of our communities. I mentioned all that Igiagik is doing and pioneering with their RivGen system, and that little hydropower is amazing. What Coeric is looking to do with geothermal. So there is a great deal that goes on with innovation and pioneering, but for so many, it is still, the fuel that you consume is still your principal way to power your generator and to keep warm. When I visited many of the coastal communities following Typhoon Merbok, it was really impactful to be with families when they were crying not over the loss of their home, but over the loss of the contents of their freezers that they had spent all year fishing and harvesting, whether it was moose or whether it was caribou or it was the berries in the freezer. And that was where the real tragedy was. So when we think about reliability and what it means, every little increment that you can reduce your costs because you can purchase in greater bulk is appreciated. And the value that you've pointed out there to DOE with the technical and financial assistance that has allowed for these levels of security to be built are important on so many different levels. I want to ask hopefully a very quick question of you, Mr. Conrad, to start here. Dr. Ortiz has outlined the recommendations from the report that was just recently released. If this hearing was greater down the line, I might say, what of these recommendations have you put in place? But I recognize that it is all relatively fresh. But the statement was made that DOE agrees to the recommendations, and I'm assuming that that is a correct statement, and that you are that within the Department of Energy you are looking to implement those recommendations.
Yes, Chair Murkowski, that is correct. The department and the Loan Program Office has said that they agree with all the recommendations and they're beginning implementation immediately. Good.
I want to ask you about the Indian Country Energy and Infrastructure Working Group, ICWIG. This was previously facilitated by the National Conference of State Legislatures. We understand that contract was canceled in March of this year. Can you share specifically what DOE-IE is doing to keep ICWIG operating? I'm told that that it has been of good benefit to tribal citizens. So I want to know kind of your commitment to keeping these lines of communication open regarding ICWIG, the annual grantee convenings, which again allow for a lot of sharing that goes on.
Thank you for the question, Senator. We do support the Indian Country Energy Infrastructure Working Group, and we have taken on operations of it internally with federal staff for the moment.
Do you have the resources, the staff, and the funding?
We currently do have the staff and the funding. We would like to return to more of the contractor support because of the logistics of handling the meetings when they're in person is quite burdensome. The scheduling and the travel logistics.
That coming up as a
request for approval, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Dr. Ortiz, I want to talk a little bit more about this public finance pathway. You mentioned LPO is working on it. It makes good sense. It allows tribes to utilize other revenues that they may have to repay their debts. It seems like a natural way to increase demand for the program without increasing risk to the federal government for default there. So can you share more about what other federal loan programs may already utilize this pathway, what benefits you see it can provide to prospective borrowers, and at the same time you're talking about that, highlight any increased risks for the federal government that you might see in utilizing this proposal?
Yes, the public financing pathway that LPO has proposed definitely has a lot of potential. It is similar to some programs run by Rural Development and Rural Utilities Service at USDA, and it allows bringing part of the work of due diligence or the underwriting process in-house. So it has the potential to reduce the review time for for energy projects by kind of scaling the level of review to the risk and size of the project, and also to reduce costs by reducing reliance on costly consultants. That said, in order to implement it, Energy is going to have to invest in dedicated and trained staff who really know how to leverage public finance alternatives.
And you're saying they don't exist currently?
They do not currently exist. In terms of the risk to the federal government, it's not something we looked at specifically in our report, but it's worth thinking a little bit about the risk potentially to some tribal governments. In terms of the Department of Energy expects the public finance pathway to work by having projects being backed by tribal governments. This is essential. It recognizes tribal sovereignty. It is very important. Though, at the same time, many tribal governments do not have the kinds of revenue sources that allow them a lot of discretion in where to take funds from. So because they don't have the ability to levy municipal bonds or to increase tax revenue as easily as other states and localities might, it could pose some sort of potential risk to some tribes and their government operating revenue.
Thank you for that. Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all of you for testifying. Mr. Conrad, the President's budget in 26 recommends that the Office of Indian Energy not fund wind, solar, and battery projects. As we all know, that hasn't been enacted yet. So I guess the first question is, are you applying some sort of prohibition retroactively to the money that you still have in 25 funds?
No, sir.
Okay. So have you approved any wind, solar, or battery projects?
With 25 funds?
Is your microphone on?
Oh, sorry. With 25 funds?
Yes. With any appropriated funds?
Yes, we have.
Could you tell me what they are?
This calendar year?
Sure.
We haven't had the selections and awards this year. They've been on pause.
Okay.
So but in prior years, yes.
No, I mean, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that.
So we've been under the continuing resolution and had our spend plan approved over the summer. So we've had the increments of funds unable to offer a full notice of funding opportunity with the 25 funds. So we're looking forward to using the 25 funds in the future once we have approval to develop that notice of funding opportunity.
Do you think the existing statute, which is to say the continuing resolution, gives you the authority to have a preference for projects? Let me say it another way. Do you think the continuing resolution enables you to discriminate against wind, solar, or batteries?
It remains as it always has been, and we continue to work with tribes on any project that they propose or request technical assistance on.
How many grant applications to your office have been for wind, solar, and batteries in this calendar year or this fiscal year, however you want to answer that question?
I would have to get back to you with the exact number on that, but overall, historically, it's a very high number.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is, and I'd like to confirm this, but what I'm hearing is that DOE is holding up $30 million of OIE's fiscal year 25 funding, about half of its budget. And just for context here, right? I mean, I remember one of the first interactions I had with Senator Mullen, and we had an energy roundtable, and he was a little surprised at the extent to which I was open-minded to energy sovereignty, even though I clearly have a preference for wind, solar, and battery. But I do believe in self-determination, and I don't think every fossil fuel project is inappropriate. And that was sort of the beginning of a beautiful, if somewhat uneven, friendship. And so I would like to be reassured that although the Trump administration and Republicans generally have a preference for non-renewable energy, that you're not excluding those, because the truth is, right? The truth is coal doesn't pencil. Gas sometimes pencils, but oftentimes you're in a line to get a combined cycle turbine, right? And so you're talking about and geothermal's 8, 10, 12 years, nuclear even longer. And so the cheapest and most immediate energy that you can generate, if you're, most of the time, not in Alaska, I understand, but most of the time in the continental United States is wind and solar. And I would just like to be reassured that if we're into energy abundance and energy dominance, what we mean by that is not just certain categories of energy, because I have stretched politically to say there are instances in which, look, even on the island of Oahu, we're still lighting low sulfur fuel oil on fire for electrons. I don't love that, but we don't have an alternative in the short run as we ramp up our clean energy. So could you please reassure me that you're going to look at this from the standpoint of what's going to get the maximum number of electrons on the grid, what's going to get the maximum dollar amount into tribal government's hands, as opposed to what is going to effectuate one political party or the other's preferences?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're focused on using the taxpayer resources to promote reliable, affordable, and secure energy resources. And we analyze projects based on a robust analysis. So we're not approving projects that raise energy costs for tribes.
Final question, with your indulgence, Chair. Ms. Ortiz, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act rescinded $75 million in credit subsidy funds. Does LPO have any remaining credits?
Yes, our understanding is that LPO has $10.5 million in credit subsidy funds, which is nowhere near enough to cover the $19.9 billion in estimated loan authority it has.
Okay. Mr. Conrad, can we follow up on, I know it's not a lot of money, but it is still money. Can we follow up on that $10.5 million to make sure it gets put to good use pursuant to the statute?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schatz. And just for the record here, when we have these energy loan programs, we all talk about technology neutral, right? That it's going to be whatever your source is, whether it's wind or solar or fossil-based, whether it's coal, whether it's natural gas. And so that's the expectation here. That's from this senator, is that it is technology neutral. And in my state, yeah, you're right. We do have a lot of all of the above, but the projects that we can get online quickest and, quite honestly, cheapest right now are wind and solar, and we do have several of these that are in that pause category, along with some battery storage. So even those of us that come from fossil-rich places are waiting for some of these important technologies. Everything that we can do to reduce those costs that these communities are paying, that and to offset then bulk fuel, because that's what we got right now. I don't have a list on who's next. Senator Smith. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Murkowski and Vice Chair Schatz, and thanks to all of you for being here today. Mr. Conrad, I'd like to follow up, I think, a bit on what Senator Murkowski and Senator Schatz were just talking about. And this question has to do with how the Trump administration is approaching its government-to-government relationships with tribal nations. So a few weeks ago, my staff met with your team to understand the office's work with Minnesota tribes. And during this meeting, we were probing into how the department has conducted any tribal consultation on the administration's decision not to provide any financial or technical assistance for work on solar and wind or battery projects. And what we heard then was that that tribal consultation hadn't occurred. So I wanted to just follow up with you on this. Can you address this? Can you talk about what your plan is to hold tribal consultation on this policy to basically pause projects that are wind or solar and so forth?
Sure. Well, right now that restriction is in the budget request. So it's a negotiation between the administration and Congress right now. If that becomes law, we're obligated to implement the law and follow the direction of the administration, of course. And looking at what our strategic plan or how we're going to implement that, those options would be what would be ripe for consultation, rather than consult on something that we don't have an ability or we're not making the decision on as our office.
But so, just to be clear, this pause is in effect. Is that right? I mean, you're not making grants. You're not proceeding with projects based on the direction of the Trump administration.
But not based on the, I mean, for the Office of Indian Energy, we have base appropriations. They're not subject to the larger reviews that are going on under the IIJA or IRA programs. So our funds and our programs were paused under review, and as we move forward and bring things up for approval, we're getting things approved and getting things back to normal as best we can.
So what my concern is that this projects are paused right now, and that's having a big impact on Indian country projects that were in process and are now paused. And what I would expect, based on what the law is, that if you're going to take a policy action like that has direct impact on tribal nations, that the legal requirement to do consultation would click into place, that legal requirement is sort of underlying to the work that IE does. I mean, I think that this, as I understand it, the statutory authorization for IE requires, in quote, that it works in accordance with federal policies promoting Indian self-determination, which we all understand means specifically tribal formal consultation. So I would just ask you to think to maybe give this additional thought, and then let me know how the kind of consultation that is required when decisions the federal government makes that have specific impacts on tribal nations, that consultation is occurring.
Yeah, definitely, and thank you for the question. And we also have Office of Indian Energy continue to engage with tribes, and we've held at least one of our tribal leader working group meetings. And I know that the other two tribal leader working groups, one with fossil energy and one with nuclear energy, they've continued to have meetings as well. So there's engagement that's going on. Mm-hmm. It's just not that formal national consultation. Right.
It's and I know that you and I both understand the difference between engagement and communication and collaboration and the formal consultation that is the understanding of what that direct government-to-government relationship means. So
I hear you.
I'm sure you do, sir, and I appreciate that. I have one more question, but what I'm going to do is to submit that question for the record in the interest of time. And this question has to do with the excellent report that Ms. Ortiz and the GAO has produced at the request of Senator Murkowski and Senator Schatz, looking at the many, many barriers that are there for the Tribal Energy Financing Program. And I specifically have some follow-up questions for you, Mr. Conrad, around the issues of capacity building and what more needs to be done there. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Chair Murkowski, thank you. So look at it, the purpose of today's hearing is to discuss unleashing Indian energy. It's a great topic. We've been talking about this for a lot of years in Montana, and it's very much in line with President Trump's goal of securing American energy dominance. We need more reliable, affordable energy. I remember the days kind of before AI, when you meet with the great tech leaders in this country, the first thing they would talk about is that one of their constraints was not enough skilled software developers and programmers to meet the needs of these growing businesses. Today, the number one issue they bring up is energy, and not enough energy. And no matter whose numbers you look at, it's somewhere between 50 and 80% more power we're going to need in the next 20 years than we currently use today. But reliable, affordable energy is critical, not only just to meet the needs of the economy going forward, but for economic development, particularly in some of our rural communities in Montana on our 7 Indian reservations. As we say in Montana, it's a beautiful state. Grateful I got to grow up there and still call it home. But oftentimes you speak with Montanans, they'll say we've got poverty with a view. We've got to do better here in economic development. And by enhancing an all of the above energy portfolio centered on baseload power sources, that can mean the difference between life and death during some of our bitter winter months. Montana has seen a number of success stories coming from important collaborations between tribes and the Department of Energy. The Office of Indian Energy was helpful in providing the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes with funding and technical assistance to acquire operatorship of the SKQ Dam. This helped the tribe create a number of very good high-paying jobs, generating affordable hydroelectric renewable power to sell on the open market. The Crow tribe in southeastern Montana are also trying to expand their energy capacity. Montana sits on the largest recoverable coal reserves in the nation. We're famous for a lot of things, great skiing, wonderful streams to fly fish on, but some folks don't recognize that Montana has more recoverable coal than any state in the United States. There's also large tracts on the Crow Reservation. My good friend, Chairman Frank Whiteclay of the Crow Tribe, will tell you that coal mining is a crucial economic driver for his tribe. The Crow Revenue Act would authorize a land swap to allow the tribe to control subsurface holdings within their reservation. This would put the tribe in the driver's seat to make decisions about their own land, very important word called sovereignty, and provide a key revenue stream to promote economic development. The Crow are also eager to develop hydropower capabilities on the Yellowtail Afterbay Dam. The Crow Tribe Water Settlement Amendments Act extends the hydropower authorization with the Bureau of Reclamation to ensure the tribe has enough time to complete the project. And this is key because time is running out. First question is for Deputy Director Conrad. Would you agree that increasing energy revenues, no matter the source, is important for tribes to both bolster their economies and enhance tribal sovereignty?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And yes, of course. And we've always talked about energy resources as solely energy generation from tribal lands, but there's also revenue streams from participating in the broader energy economy as well. So technologies that can be proven on a reservation with technology that they can export and work and create a revenue stream is another great viable option as well. So excited to work with them and find out more how we can help.
A follow-up on that, thank you, is would you agree and support our efforts that Congress should pass legislation that would allow tribes to develop their own resources, whether it's coal or hydropower?
Absolutely. It's, that tenet of tribal sovereignty and energy development, tribal energy sovereignty, that they have the right to develop what they have for the benefit of their people, the revenue that they need to provide support for those programs.
Thank you. Chairman Murkowski and Vice Chairman Schatz, it's time we move forward on that Crow Revenue and Crow Water Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Daines. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you all for being here. You're going to find pretty much consistent agreement here that for our tribal reservations in Indian country, we need to do all we can. And the technology does need to be neutral, and it also is based on geography, what's available. I will say this, Department of Energy, and this has been my frustration since I've been on this committee, and I've been on this committee since I've been in the Senate in 2017. And we get these incredible, Dr. Ortiz, thank you for your report, facts about Indian country. Indian country is always left behind, under-resourced, understaffed, lack of tribal consultation. And then we work together to do everything we can to change that. We introduce legislation, we appropriate, we want to make sure there is that consultation, there's the technical assistance, and then it seems like politics always gets in the way, and there's somebody in a political makes a political decision to take it away. It is frustrating, and I think it's frustrating to all of us, no matter who the administration is. And I think that's why you see many of us fighting to right this ship and do right by Indian country. And so this is my frustration. Department of Energy, this is their congressional report, has reported that the vast majority of unelectrified homes in the United States are located on tribal land. That's true in my state. I invite you, Mr. Conrad, come to Nevada. I've been to the Indian country in my state. Some of them do not have water, let alone electricity. I will say many, because of our geography and our opportunities that are provided now because of the work that we have done, have the opportunity to have electricity, a different source of electricity. Most of it's going to be renewable. We have geothermal, we have solar, we have batteries. And there's been a strong investment for so many tribal communities so that they can have that opportunity. And now here we are again, the politics getting in the way and taking away those opportunities for folks to have just simple electricity in their homes that we all take for granted, quite honestly, in some of our areas. So that is my frustration. I understand your challenges and your constraints, but I hope you are true to your word, and I look forward to working with you, that this technology should be neutral, that no matter where you live in Indian country, your source of electricity should be available to you, and the federal support for it should be available to you to utilize, based on what we receive from this report. And so solar and wind, I don't like this idea of playing favorites. That's not what this is about. And so I'm looking forward to working with you, and I've listened to you, and I hope we have an opportunity to work together. Dr. Ortiz, I don't have much time, but I do want to ask you a question, because there's been a number of programs that have been zeroed out after we've appropriated some of the funds for them. One of them was the Solar for All program, which was designed to help low-income and disadvantaged communities gain access to new and efficient energy technologies and lower electricity bills. The program was set to distribute $7 billion, $500 million of which had been obligated for 6 different tribal applicants. And just a few weeks ago, the Trump administration's EPA announced that they would be terminating that program, leaving grant recipients without the assistance they were promised. So, as you've outlined in your report, how does this leave Indian country? What's the ultimate impact here for Indian country when these types of programs are taken away?
Thank you for that question. I think in addition to the failure to meet the nation's trust and treaty obligations and really follow through for the people of Indian country, it perpetuates the myth that you can't get anything done in Indian country. We have tribes and consortia and TIDOs who are doing so much work to come together, really leverage the kinds of power sources they have on their lands, elsewhere, other resources, bring that together. They spend years planning the process. They spend years investing in finance, responding to questions from agencies, and then when something like this happens, the deal falls apart, and it leaves people without power, and it just perpetuates this myth that should not be the case. There really is amazing potential for energy development in Indian country, and one of the greatest benefits of this tribal energy finance program in particular was this technology neutral aspect of it. It really allowed tribes to be in the driver's seat to determine what was best for their situation and their resources.
Thank you. And I know my time is up. I do have a question for Ms. Fenton, if it's all right, because I do think it's important. I appreciate the work that you have done in the collaboration and thinking outside the box. And I think I know in Nevada, many of our tribal communities are in really rural frontier areas, and it requires them to figure out how to address some of these challenges. And you talked about in Alaska being a model for some of these partnerships. Can you talk a little bit about some of those partnerships and what I can bring back to at least Indian country in Nevada, where they could look to say, hey, this is a model and it's something we should be looking at that we could possibly replicate or learn from?
Yes, and specifically, we are looking into what can be replicated, but just hearing, about some of the hydropower and, coal resources they have in Montana, we've really found that the technical assistance, getting out into communities, seeing their needs, understanding their unique circumstances for developing a project, and also taking a challenge or an issue and supporting them to get that to a project. You can have an issue. It takes a lot of development to get into a fundable project, whether it's state, federal funds, philanthropic funds, loan potential, adding to that capital stack. Having that hand-holding and technical assistance is crucial. So that's something that can be replicated, copy-pasted to other states and tribal communities.
Can I ask, is your commission, is it state? Is it a state-funded or state?
So we are the regional commission for Alaska. We focus on just the state of Alaska.
Okay.
But we are looking at technology transfers and seeing where we can partner with other communities and whatnot. So I say that the technical assistance aspect, the partnering aspect, and there could be some potential on Mr. Conrad and I discussed earlier today how the regionalization of this type of support can be very helpful. We've seen success in Alaska. Maybe we can, have another coordinating body or some additional communication and coordination to focus on tribal infrastructure. Okay. We have areas in Alaska that have had, more success because they had someone dedicated or a group dedicated to a particular facet of infrastructure, so water and sewer, for example, and we have, partners that are going into the, more of the energy and power realm, and then we have, transportation groups. And so coordinating, communicating some of the successes from that regional approach, giving that support to individual or smaller communities that need that backup. They may have, staff turnover. They need subject matter expertise. When we have it in the regions, or even in addition to having additional supplies or things located in region to take away, to add some slack in the line of the supply chain, of course, especially in Alaska, whenever you are operating with short construction seasons and whatnot. I think those are some things that can be helpful in other areas.
Thank you. Thank you all three for being here.
Thank you, Senator. And I think that that's a good question, just in terms of what what kind of sharing and partnering is going on, because as different as the regions may be, there is a lot of commonality of the challenges. And so how we can get smarter by sharing information that we have, technology transfer, knowing the technical assistance that you receive from DOE, you not only learn a lot, but they also learn from what you're able to do on the ground as well. And so instead of just keeping all that information, making sure that there is sharing of this in terms of what we can do more to enhance program deliverability, what you can be doing more. We all know that there's limited expertise out there. We hear that over and over and over again, that we don't have the sophisticated grant writers. We don't have those who are really well versed in permit applications. And so how we can be collaborating more there, I think, is important. One of the questions that I wanted to direct to both Mr. Conrad and to Ms. Fenton is on the prospect for potential partnering in an area that doesn't necessarily relate to unleashing energy here, but when we're talking about housing, your house doesn't mean much other than just the roof over your head if we can't meet the energy needs, providing for water and sewer hookups, providing for power there. And we have seen play out in Alaska a pretty great partnership between the Denali Commission and the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, working with the IE, the Indian Energy Office, in providing technical assistance. And it's been great. We appreciate that. There are a number of funding sources at the Department of Energy outside of the Office of Indian Energy that aim to address home electrification, the weatherization issues, some other housing-related needs. And again, you've got technical and financial resources that we've heard great things about. The tribally designated housing authorities can't directly access them. I'm hoping that we can have a follow-on conversation working with our staffs, your department, to talk about how we may be able to improve the efficiency of the distribution of these types of funds for housing support in places like Alaska and really across Indian country where we know that need is. And so I'm hopeful that you will have an open door on this aspect of what more can be done on the technical assistance side. And then, Ms. Fenton, if you can address possibly the role that Denali Commission could play in streamlining access to the funds to improve whether it's home electrification, energy efficiency within housing, because it is kind of part and parcel to what we're talking about here today. So if you...
Yes, absolutely. That's a very exciting opportunity. And we do have the technical assistance and an additional navigator service that can help guide people who are requesting the technical assistance to other DOE resources as well as other federal resources within the scope of what they're interested in. So we have dedicated staff to do that, and we're looking forward to how we can be more innovative and effective delivery.
Great, I'd like to hear that. Ms. Fenton.
Well, you are absolutely right to connect energy systems with housing. We see the Denali Commission as being a tool to, help bridge some of Department of Energy's programs with Alaska's tribal housing authorities. With our broad authority that spans across siloed programs, we're not just energy, we're not just housing, we're not just water and sewer, we're not just transportation, we're all of the above when it comes to critical infrastructure in communities. Paired with our Section 311 transfer authority that allows us to braid funding streams and put together that capital stack from both federal, state, and even private organizations. We could assist coordinating across some of these fragmented funding through the various offices, which we understand it makes it hard for small housing entities to access. And I think if we were to serve as a coordinating partner similar to HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Office of Native American Programs, we could potentially, streamline some of that process, coordinate resources, and, ensure that dollars are distributed strategically and effectively. And then, we're even in the midst of standing up, a quarterly housing working group, and these types of things, this type of coordination that we do in Alaska helps see what projects are in the pipeline, what funding is available, and we try to pair it with funding, opportunities to try to build that capital stack and make projects move forward.
That's good. Good. Dr. Ortiz, you kind of outlined in your report some of the barriers that are out there in using the Tribal Energy Financing Program. You've got high and unpredictable cost of due diligence. You've mentioned that in your testimony here today. We've heard from some applicants, again, that DOE hires contractors without tribal expertise, and so it just adds to the time that they have to spend on the due diligence and the cost for the applicant, and this is all ahead of knowing whether or not they'd be able to secure the loan or the loan guarantee. And so you can see a scenario where people are going to be like, no, I heard from so-and-so, it was a bad experience, they were 2 years into the process, it cost them a lot of money, and look where they are. And then to the point that you made earlier in response to Senator Cortez Masto here, is, you may be in a situation where you've done it all, and now the administration has everything put on pause. All the money that you spent, all the years, and so we're not doing a lot to kind of sell the benefits of the program, right? What do we do about that? I mean, obviously, if we have these reforms that are made that the report suggests, that's going to be important. But there's some real deterrents that have been legitimate deterrents out there. And now you have stacked on top of that just kind of the word on the street, if you will, that it's a tough process, it's expensive, and you don't get where we need to go. Do you have any good ideas on what can be done to kind of rebuild the credibility here of the program so that you're going to have additional entrants?
I think there are definitely two major aspects. There's the thought of, if we're going to really revamp and revise the existing program, DOE needs to implement GAO's recommendations. They need to think about due diligence costs, consider how to implement a public finance pathway in a way that really doesn't place additional risk on applicants, but streamlines the process. They need to rethink how they review applications to scale that review for the risk level and size of the loans. And then Congress would need to appropriate enough for the credit subsidy and the costs of administering the program. That's if the program stays as it is. That would promote its major benefits of having this technology-neutral, tribally driven sense where tribes are really able to leverage what they have towards economic development through saved electricity costs, revenue generation, and job creation. There's another set of questions around whether or not this program needs to be in its current form. And really, there are a couple of questions that came out in our report are who's administering the program. By placing the program within the loan program's office, it was put into It was put along with other programs that serve billions of dollars for their project size and are addressing or using cutting-edge technologies. And that's not what most of these tribal energy finance program applications are for. There's also the question of what kind of need the program is trying to meet. One benefit of the program is that it's remarkably flexible. The loans, or the applications that have been submitted have gone from $23 million to over $8 billion. And that's wonderful. But does it make sense to have one program that's really including some of those really massive projects in with those smaller projects that might be clearly tested technology, easy to roll out, quick to implement? So those philosophical questions of like, where is it going to be? We really need tribal expertise. We really need people who understand tribal energy development, understand how tribal governments work, have cultural competence, and really understand tribal revenue generation and how tribes use enterprises to support their operating costs. That office needs to be competent in those skills wherever this program lays. And currently, as our report pointed out, that is not a strength of the Loan Programs Office. That is a strength of the Office of Indian Energy. But again, thinking about the goals of the program, is it really about serving everyone, or is it better to focus the program on, for example, what we heard from one expert is the missing middle of programs, those projects from around $25 million to around $100 million. And that would meet a lot of need that is in Indian country.
Well, I really appreciate what you have shared there towards the end, because I think oftentimes what happens around here, and Senator, you mentioned you've been on the committee now, your full tenure here in the Senate, and oftentimes it's like hit replay. We have different people in front of us giving the testimony, but it's basically the same story. And it's because we just try to do a tweak here to the program, or maybe we expand your authorization, so instead of 20 million, it's 40 million, but we really haven't addressed the real operational efficiencies within the programs themselves. We don't do that level of oversight. That's what this is an oversight hearing. And so I really appreciate that you have ventured out and gone beyond just saying this is what you might want to recommend for existing program, but maybe we need to revisit, to relook at this. In my head, I'm thinking about what the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is dealing with on the nuclear side. There's a big difference between permitting and siting a 3-mile island versus what we're talking about with small modular reactors, and yet it's kind of the same thing. We're going to put you in the same bucket, and it's going to be just awful. We're doing that with hydro relicensing, where it doesn't make any difference if you're the Hoover Dam or if you're a small dam in southeast Alaska. So I think you're challenging us to look perhaps a little bit differently at how we might structure this so that we really do get that value. Let me ask you, Jocelyn. You mentioned a couple times in your testimony that the funding that is available, the grant funding that we're providing, particularly when it comes to the bulk fuel needs, isn't enough to address the capital needs, much less the operation and the maintenance. So you've cited the need for improved public financing tools, greater flexibility. What opportunities do you see within DOE's Tribal Energy Financing Program? What do you think it's going to take to make it work better in Alaska, and how we can kind of address the underutilization that we see of the Tribal Energy Financing Program?
Right. To start with, we see that bundled projects and aggregating projects to get some of those efficiencies is key. So bundling a bulk fuel project, for example, instead of financing one $8 million tank farm in a single village, we could have a
Remind me, how many bulk fuel projects, how many communities are being looped into this one proposal that you're working right now?
what we call phase one.
Phase
The
one,
$100
yeah.
million is going into 10 communities.
Yeah, okay.
And each community doesn't break down to $10 million each community. It depends. It's very site specific, and we have to get out and make sure that we have our designs and whatnot. So aggregating, having more funding at one time, there are efficiencies to be gained, having projects that have proximal, geographic locations for field visits and logistics for the equipment and supplies to do the projects. Having mixed energy infrastructure packets together, or packaged together, like a tank farm, a powerhouse upgrade, and renewables and a battery system package all at one time. We recognize that diesel and other bulk fuels are unavoidable in rural Alaska. They serve as the backbone to these series of microgrids. While integrating renewables, we need to upgrade those systems so often. So having, a technology neutral or energy agnostic project in a community to really, push forward into.
And I'm going to interrupt you there because that's something that needs to be underscored. I think sometimes the thought is, well, if we put in that wind turbine or if we put in a few solar panels over here, then we don't need the bulk fuel storage. We don't need that. But you've got to have the backup, and you have intermittent sources that are not there in solar is not good 365 days a year anywhere, much less in Alaska. So I think that's important that we underscore that you've got a coupling that goes on.
Absolutely. The wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine, but the diesel-generated power plant is that energy and power backbone of those communities. And while integrating renewables, helps with, fuel shortages or price of fuel fluctuations, and, rural and remote communities really find renewables to be a very beneficial aspect of the power supply. Where every gallon of diesel, offset is helpful, lowering long-term costs and whatnot. So that's definitely part of a piece of the puzzle. So let's see, expanding your projects, aggregating projects, having mixed energy infrastructure projects, and then mitigating risk by either having, technical oversight or de-risking projects with grant funding, understanding the capital stack, lowering the risk to lenders and whatnot, that can really help these projects moving forward, and understanding that deferred energy and bulk fuel needs, grants they're just not going to cut it moving forward. And we are doing a bulk fuel aggregation study that we're very excited about hearing the recommendations, but they're not ready yet for this hearing, unfortunately, but stay tuned.
Okay, yeah, we will stay tuned on that.
Chair Murkowski?
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Ortiz.
If I might jump in just on integrating different energy sources. One of the villages we visited in Alaska a couple of years ago for our work on microgrids that we put out last year looked at a system that had wind as well as diesel. When that village was able to add battery storage to its system, it was able to save over 60,000 gallons of diesel a year, and that's $250,000 or more to that one village. And that's an amazing cost when you can really integrate, recognizing where tribes are and what different circumstances and different geographical factors play into their energy needs.
Well, I appreciate you raising that, and I'll ask you to just expand there, because you've given a specific example. But in terms of how the TEFP is structured, you've suggested before that there were reforms that the report addressed with regards to the office. Do you have any suggestions when it comes to the financing program specific that we might want to look to either maintain or enhance or reform, add to other programs? What do you have to offer there?
I think some of the main benefits are things we've already discussed. There is the flexibility to address any kind of energy technology, this technology neutral aspect. One other benefit is that projects for the Tribal Energy Finance Program could be done on or off of tribal lands. So when you get those partnerships working together, they can really leverage different strengths from different partners. The program also allows multiple applicant types. So a tribe could apply, but a TITO could apply, and also a lender on behalf of the tribe, or a tribal consortia, or tribal consortium, which really allows smaller tribes the opportunity to have ownership of these projects. I think a lot of tribes are used to having developers approach them and want to develop something and then kind of maybe give the tribe some benefit, but keep the bulk of the benefits for themselves. And one of the great benefits of the Tribal Energy Finance Program is that ownership aspect. That gives the prospect for the tribes of increasing the reliability of their energy, of their electricity, decreasing their energy costs, and really having revenue generation and job creation along with those projects.
So I'm coming to the end of a series of questions that I wanted to raise. We haven't really talked that much. It's been mentioned that that staffing in the report was a concern, limited staffing to review applications, but also the expertise of the staffing and their understanding or lack thereof of tribes, and just not dealing with tribes or tribal energy development organizations. It makes sense when you think it through that, okay, if you're dealing with somebody that doesn't really understand tribal application or the implications, that they're going to be learning as they go, or they might give you bad information. But what other complications do you see when you're dealing with those who have lack of loan program offices that have the unfamiliarity with tribes and the tribal energy development organizations? And I don't know whether there are specific examples, whether it just adds to time and cost, or whether it's even worse than that you can actually get like just bad information here.
There are several examples of what happens when you have that turnover in staff and the lack of training. It can cause confusion, increased administrative burden for the tribes, and really lengthen that time of review and the cost. We heard from one potential applicant that it took 6 months to get answers to questions. We heard that from one applicant that months into the process, they were still getting questions about whether the project was even eligible for the program, so they were feeling really strung along. At one point, LPO asked one applicant to increase the scope of its project by adding a whole different element that the tribe had not planned on including. And it seemed to have no appreciation for the massive burden that was, both administratively and in terms of finances and working with its development partners. And when you have no in-house expertise or not enough in-house legal expertise, we heard from one tribe about how that lack of expertise led Energy to really push every question out to consultants. But that was on the tribe's dime,
yeah.
right?
So how, in terms of processing of loan applications or loan guarantee applications between a tribal, under tribal program versus a non-tribal program, is it about the same length of time? Have you done an analysis on that?
We didn't do a specific analysis for this report, but GAO's definitely reported on challenges with tribal energy development for many years, including delays in terms of what it takes to go through permitting when you're dealing with trust lands and resources or complicated ownership or access issues, in terms of understanding how revenue models work for tribal governments. So we know that that misunderstanding or that lack of knowledge can really extend the time. Tribes also, like other energy development projects, face lengthy environmental reviews at times, and sometimes that is a result of some of what might be going on the lands in terms of cultural resources. That's not a problem necessarily. It is something that needs to be factored into the length of time it takes to review a project. Also, generally, many tribes don't have the kind of administrative capacity, and we've reported on systematic barriers to accessing federal funds for tribes because of this lack of administrative capacity, a lack of an agency understanding of these tribal government structures or tribal revenue models. And all of that gets wound into this. And when you place extra burdens like high equity costs, high development costs, and a really onerous due diligence process on top of all of this, our report showed how that really just puts a damper on the whole process.
So, Mr. Conrad, within the office, I'm assuming that you have seen the reductions in forces that other departments, other agencies have. I don't know what your numbers are. I don't know if you can share them with me, but within the loan office, the Tribal Energy Loan Program, have you lost that level of expertise? It's one thing to say, well, I've got my numbers. I know how many people that I have in a given office, but there's a difference between the seat in the chair and the person that actually has this level of expertise that Dr. Ortiz is talking about.
So thank you for the question and digging into this issue and the findings of the report. Our office, while we offer technical assistance, capacity building, and grants, we don't do the loan program office. And I don't have specific I mean, I know people who are operating it. I don't know their specific I haven't reviewed their resumes and that sort of thing. I know our office has lost 9 employees, which is a decent amount because we're a small office. The other offices have lost more, significantly more. But I can't address how the loan program office is able to staff the program. I understand that they have a few leads on the outreach team, and then they use portions of people's time on more of the origination and back of the house expertise.
Well, I'm just thinking about, well, the time that you conducted this report, or the time that you did the research for the report was before, was while the Biden administration was still in office. We've now seen change in administration, but we've also seen reductions in force across the federal workforce. So I'd be curious to kind of know where we are with those numbers. But again, I recognize that numbers are not just numbers when it comes to levels of expertise. Dr. Ortiz, do you want to?
We had a recent update from the Department of Energy, and they have about 272 FTEs assigned to the loan program office. 43 of those positions were vacant, and 110 of those were on administrative leave in anticipation of retirement or resignation. So they're working with fewer than half of their regular staff. On top of that, during the course of our review, we discussed with them dedicated staff for the project, and they had dedicated at least 12 individual seats for people to have this expertise and really be interacting with tribes and doing that, bring their expertise into the origination process and the review process. But they told us that they really struggled to fill those seats and that they couldn't keep people, so instead they rotate folks in. And that sometimes leads to a real disconnect in terms of what tribes hear from people. So there's a very strong outreach team with a lot of experience working with tribal nations. But they don't always have the same understanding of the program that the people originating the loan do. And that creates a conflict and problems down the road as these projects move further along.
It just causes you to recognize even more, the inequities that we see throughout Indian country, what we see in places like Alaska when it comes to energy. We heard today communities that don't have running water, don't have electricity. We certainly have that in many of the villages. And it's always those that have the least capacity that are in the most challenging of situations. And it's just kind of this deep hole that they're in, and they just can't get out. And this is where we need that level of expertise. We need the technical assistance, and we need these barriers of, okay, you're going to be able to get help with this, but you have to pay these outside contractors, and basically they're getting paid by the hour. And so you look at it and you don't even know how to start. And then those who have greater capacity, greater capability, greater resources already are able to take the home that they already have, that is already plumbed and already wired, and make it more efficient. And that is great. But we still have so many that are just working to get the basic needs met. And so how we help facilitate this, and I'm going back to the suggestion that you raised, Ms. Ortiz, is that maybe we need to be separating out what is contained within this Indian loan program, this tribal loan program, and have it be based on the size or the capacity or the capability, or I don't know, but not just basically any tribal entity everybody's all in one bucket, regardless of where you sit with regards to your capacity or your resources. So something for us to be thinking about, because I hear too many who view this as it's great that you have that back in Washington, D.C., but it doesn't do me a darn bit of good in Kipnuk. And that has really bothered me, because the number of people from my state who have come to me seeking help and seeking resources, and I say, well, don't forget, we have the Office of Indian Energy, we have these tribal loans, and they come back and say, well, out of my reach, and we have to do better by that, and that's why I think utilizing the resources that we have, like the Denali Commission, where we can take these funding streams, these resources, do the braiding that we talk about, really leveraging things within different programs so that everybody can gain access to a level of support and resource. But it sounds like we might need to look to some restructuring here. So with that, I really appreciate the testimony of all of you. As I mentioned, this hearing record will be left open so that others may submit comments. I know members will have additional questions for the record, but I really appreciate what you have done and the opportunity for a good discussion about an important project. So with that, the committee stands adjourned.